Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our next lesson. Today we're going to be reviewing the caissons go rolling along and introducing our new piece. Now, in regards to caissons, one of the things that I have been doing the last few songs that I've been handing out in our groups has been to give you a few different renditions of each song and a few different ways to play each rendition, which essentially manifests itself in giving you the opportunity to play a song maybe 4 or 5 different ways. Now, I don't want you to feel that there's an onus put on you by me to have not only perfected each one of those ways, but even have tried each one of those ways. Each one of the ways has certain elements built into it that will be beneficial to you. So you will get more experience the more diverse you can make yourself in playing the song, but I don't want you to feel as if you practiced one way and you took the easy way out, because I don't frankly think that there is an easy way out. There are elements of playing the song in one manner that you're not going to get from the other, and vice versa. And so when I play a song for you, I don't want you to think of me giving you the songs in various degrees of difficulty. Because as I said, I don't believe that there's a quote-unquote easy way. I think that there are parts, there are things musically that you can gain by playing the song one way, and other things that you can gain by playing the song the other way. And I'd like to go over all of those with you. So if I have not been making that very clear throughout the course of this course, that is something that I am going to strive to do, whereby I go over with you the song and why this is a beneficial way to do it. Not because one is more difficult or one is easier, because, as I said, frankly, I don't think that that is the case. Now let's talk about the caissons and the copy that I had passed out to you that encouraged you to use a waltz beat, because one copy I encouraged you to use the waltz beat, the other copy I encouraged you to be the waltz beat. So let's start with the one that has the waltz beat. Now, when you're using a waltz count that is happening on your behalf, you have to take into account the tempo that is being set. Now you did set the tempo, but once you set it, it stays set for you then to follow. And that's not something that you would gain the perspective of if you weren't using a beat. There are other things that you can gain by doing it that way, but I'm going to leave that for a little bit later in the video here. So I think I played this song for you last week at a rate of 110 beats per minute, or somewhere therein. The thing with a waltz, which is a bit challenging, is, a march rather. I don't know how many times I said waltz, but it is a march. The thing with a march, which is challenging, is the fact that it's a very upbeat beat, an upbeat rhythm, and therefore a lot of players tend to play twice as fast as maybe they figured they were intended to play. And what we call that in music is something called cut time. Now, if you watch some of our other videos, we've touched upon cut time before. But cut time is a symbol in music. It almost looks like a cent symbol. It's a C with a line through it. And what you're doing, the reason it's called cut time, is that you're cutting the time values of the notes in half. So a 1-beat note becomes a half a beat, a 2-beat note becomes a 1 beat, a 4-beat note becomes a 2 beat, so on and so forth. The note value stays the same. It's how long you hold it for that changes. Now, how do you know whether you're playing in what we would call quote-unquote cut time or not? Well, there are a few ways that you can judge your pace. I'm going to start out with a way that is not going to be applicable to everybody, but I will finish with one that is. Now, the one that's not going to be applicable to everyone would apply to those of you that own Lowry's, those of you that own Yamaha Clavinovas and the CVP line that have things like marches and waltzes and foxtrots and ballads and things like that. You have a series of lights that will light up for you on the beats that occur 1, 2, 3, and 4. The first beat we call the downbeat is a red light, and then the remaining 3, if it's a 4 count anyhow, are green. And they're usually right in the middle of the instrument. They're set somewhere close to where your music is. And the idea is that if you have 4 quarter notes, you'd play each one of those quarter notes, giving each one 1 beat, and you're moving at the same rate as those lights. So if I was in cut time, I'd be moving twice as fast as those lights. So instead of a quarter note getting 1 light, 2 quarter notes gets 1 light. Now, is that an easy thing to do? Probably not for everybody. A lot of students might say, well, I can't look at lights and play at the same time. I mean, I guess it's nice that it's near my music, but I'm keeping my eyes on my music, or I have to look down at my hands, or whatever the case may be. How do you expect me to now start to look at lights? The short answer is I don't. So I want to give you another way, if that's not an avenue that you can go down, either because your instrument doesn't do it or you're not comfortable enough doing it. I want to give you an avenue that you can go down which is applicable to everybody. And that is determining how long it should take you to play the song at the rate that you set it up at. And it's a mathematical equation. It's something that it doesn't require any buttons or anything like that. It may require a calculator if you're not good at in math like I am. I'm not good in math, so calculators are helpful for me. I'm going to use some very round numbers today so that I don't need one. So let's say you look at a song and let's say that it's 2 pages long. And you notice that on each one of the pages, you've counted out every measure on page 1 and every measure on page 2. And you have 12 measures on page 1 and 13 measures on page 2. That's on all of the lines. You counted out each measure. So the song's in 4/4 time. So 25 measures, each of which has a 4 count within it. What is 25 times 4? It's 100. That means that in sum total, in that song, there are 100 beats made up of all of the notes that you see. Now, you would have come to the same conclusion had you counted out every single note and every single rest. But how tedious of an exercise is that? You have to, well, this note gets 1, so I check when this one gets 2. Okay, so now that's 3. And then, rather than doing that, you say in one way, shape, or form, every one of these measures has a 4 count. Okay? Fair enough. 25 times 4, 25 measures times 4 is 100. If I set my instrument at 100 beats per minute, how long should it take me to play the song? 1 minute. Not 45 seconds, not 1 minute and 12 seconds, not 2 minutes, not 32 seconds. 1 minute. And you want to know that before you start. I would suggest trying to figure that out with every song we do. And that way you'll know whether you're at the designated pace that you yourself set or you're not. I had someone come into our studio working through caissons. And he came in and he said, I saw you play this song at 110 beats per minute last week, and that was my goal. And I went home, and let me tell you, I couldn't get any faster than 60. And he was all down on himself because he couldn't get anywhere near where I was. And I try to be as diplomatic as I can. I said, no problem, okay, no big deal. We'll speed you up one way or another. Do me a favor and play the song for me. So we put it down to 60. Guess what happened? He was inadvertently in cut time. He was playing at 120 beats per minute. He had it set at 60, but cut time means you're going twice as fast as the speed. So not only was he wasn't not keeping up with me, he had exceeded the pace that I had set by 10 beats, which is great. You want to know that going in. He must have put it on 110, was in cut time at 110, which is actually 220, and said, my goodness, he didn't know he was in cut time. I got to bring this way down. So he brought it down to 60, still in cut time. That's 120 beats per minute. It's faster than I played it last week. So you want to know where you are. You want to know, am I in cut time or not? Okay, I don't care whether you are or not. I just want you to know whether you are or not. Okay? I've done songs before. I've had students come in and say, I wanted to practice my cut time, so what I did was I played the song once through in what we call common time, normal 4/4, and then I played it in cut time the second time through. It took me half as long. Okay? That's a really, really nice element. And it's a nice feature to utilize both from your perspective as well as the perspective of the composer. Composer's perspective says, I don't want to rewrite this music. I've already written it once. I'm going to just tell them to play it, or the arranger, tell them to play it twice as fast. Okay? So I don't have to rewrite anything. I just, tell them to go twice as fast as they did, which is great. I don't much care about the composer or the arranger. I care about you. Okay? The advantage to you in cut time is that you are seeing notes that you're very comfortable seeing. You're seeing quarter notes, you're seeing half notes, you're seeing whole notes, you're seeing notes that you've learned from the get-go. A 1-beat note, a 2-beat note, a 3, a 4. If we start using smaller and smaller valued notes, you start to get into a lot of 60s, 30-second notes. There are 64th notes out there. How are those to read? Ain't that fun. Ain't that fun to read. Okay? So we're, from our perspective, saying we want this to be easier to read by giving us the note values that we're most comfortable with and just telling ourselves to play twice as fast. Okay? So I don't look at it from the composer's perspective, as truthful as it may be that the composer may feel that way. I don't care about them. They already wrote it. We have it. Their job is done from my perspective. Okay? I'm looking out for you. And I'm saying, how can I avoid going through these very, very small valued notes, because then your measures are all different, and gosh, it's just really hard to count these out. So this is just go twice as fast as you did. Okay? Now that rendition that encouraged you to use the background, all of the chords were in boxes. That's all we had was chords. You had the opportunity to play as many fingers as you'd like for that chord. There are some of you aspiring to play full chords, which are 3 or 4 note chords in some instances. There are others of you that have Clavinova CVPs, that have Yamahas, and you have features set where you don't have to use all of the fingers in the left hand. You set that goal. I'm going to go over them each week, but you decide if and when you want to utilize them yourself. Okay? Another thing about the background march is that it does encourage you to use different sounds. You don't have to stick with the same sound all the way through. I encourage you to use different sounds. But there has to be some parameters. I mean, you can't change every line. That's going to sound silly. You certainly can't change every note. That's going to be almost impossible. So we have to think about our phrasing. We need to think about, is this a repetitious phrase or is this brand new? If something is repetitious, I am likely to use the same sound. Something brand new, I usually use something new. Well, the first 2 lines of this song are directly repeated on lines 3 and 4, note for note. But the top of page 2 is new stuff. Okay, lyrics are, oh, it's high, high, he, and the field artillery. Call out your neighbor, or call out your neighbors, call out your numbers loud and strong. That's the bridge. Okay? I'd use something new there. If I had the option, or some of you are just playing on acoustic pianos, obviously you don't have the option, but I am going to go over something today with our new song that you can do to make your acoustic piano sound a little bit different. Okay? And again, I'm going to set that aside for just a moment. When I get to line 3 of the second page, I'm going to go back. I'm going back because it's basically rehashing something I've already done. It starts to end the feel of the song, and the song's done. Well, I want to go back to what I started with. Now, for those of you with Lowry's, 2 levels is going to be a lot easier than 1, okay? With the 1 level, you just got to be a little bit mindful that you're going to be hitting a button to change. You'll be hitting a button to change back. Maybe more than 1 button. I don't know. It's going to be dependent upon what you're practicing on. At least the Lowry's are 1. You want to make sure that you've set yourself up such that the sound that you want to go to second is ready and waiting for you when you need it. You don't want to stop and say, oh gosh, where do I go? Okay? Now, 2-level instruments, top and bottom keyboard. If you have the option of putting a sound on each level, perfect. The only thing better than 1 button is none. So you put your first sound on the top, you put your second sound on the bottom, or vice versa. And then for the bridge, you just go to the other one, whatever one you didn't start on. Okay? Now, if you're going to do that, you want to make sure that you've chosen 2 sounds that sound good with a march, which is a great thing about a march is pretty much anything sounds good with a march. Marches are one of the few styles that basically all of your horns, all of your woodwinds, a lot of your percussion, as long as you stay away from things like the Hawaiian guitar, I think you should be pretty good. Okay, so what you choose is does not so much matter to me as to when you choose to use it. Okay, timing, some timing issues in this song. The end of line 1, the end of line 3 primarily, I see as difficult sections because you have 4 beats in the measure, you have 4 notes in those measures. Last measure of line 1, last measure of line 3. The notes are not even. 2 of them are, the last 2 are, the first 2 are not. Dotted quarter, 8th, which means that the dotted quarter gets the first half of beat 2, and you want to make sure that you play it that way. You want to make sure that you're not playing it such that they're even, like some of the other measures in this song. There are other measures in this song. The end of the first line on page 2, the third line, the third measure and the second line, the third measure, last measure and the third line. They're all 1-beat notes. They're even. That's one thing. Those other 2 measures are not. So you want to make sure that you're not evening them out unless they're supposed to be evened out. Okay? Let's talk about the other rendition. The other rendition, the right hand is identical. Right hand there's no difference between these 2. It's the left hand that really makes a difference. Now, what you will not gain by playing this rendition is the opportunity to follow along with cut time very well, unless you're using a metronome. Because what I would suggest doing with that piece of music is to not utilize a background. That other page would be much better if it was utilized without any buttons, or if someone was playing just on an acoustic piano, or even an older organ that doesn't have anywhere near the capabilities of the newer ones. Meaning, no styles, no easy button. It doesn't have a lot of the creature comforts that we take for granted. A lot of the older organs that have been around for a while, that stuff just wasn't available, so they didn't have it. Okay? Now you could still play a march. The only difference is, you're the march. You're everything. You don't have something compelling you forward, which in some cases might be considered to be good. But then you really can't practice that going back and forth between cut time and not cut time quite as easily. Okay? Now, when you're looking at that extra page, though that other page, I won't even say extra page, other page, you'll notice that the left hand is broken up into 2 different formats. There are some instances where your left hand is a letter. There are other instances where your left hand is a letter within a box. The letter within a box is a chord, just like you'd always play. The letter outside of the box is a bass tone. Now, where is the bass played on my instrument? Well, it depends upon the type of instrument that you have. Let's say, for example, you're playing on a piano. If you're playing on a piano, the bass section is about right here. Okay, the last quarter of the piano would be the bass. When you think of the different vocal ranges, when you go from, the sopranos all the way down, they're broken up into pretty much 4 different categories, and you can basically break your keyboard up into 4 different categories as well. I often talk about looking at the keys as if they were on one end where the bass tones were lowest. And then it would probably stand up about this high, about 4 or 5 feet, maybe 6 feet. And your highest notes would be where your sopranos are. And as you chop down, you get closer to the floor, the notes get lower. Obviously, we think about left to right, but if you flipped it the other way, that's how you'd look at it. Okay? More like an accordion, actually. So your bass is here. Can you play chords down there? Not if you want it to sound good, you can. Chords down there sound terrible because they're too deep. It's why you never see a bass guitar player strumming chords. Not to say that they couldn't strum chords, but it's just not going to sound very good. There's too many low tones played together that are running into one another. Chords generally live in this general area here and up. You can play chords with your right hand all the way up if you wanted to, but left-hand chords generally over here. Well, if you look at that music, what do you see? But you see a bass tone, a C, followed by a chord C. The next bass tone is a B. Now, I need to play my bass tones down here, right? I need to play my chords around here. So what am I doing for my bass tones? I'm reaching to the left. What am I doing for my chords? I'm reaching back over to the right. So there's this movement, which in and of itself is creating rhythm. Okay? There's a very apparent walk down on the second line where it goes G, F, E, D, C. It's bass tone one after the next. But even at the beginning, it's a little bit hidden. But look at the bass tones in between the C chord. C bass tone, C chord. B bass tone, which is one note down, C chord. A bass tone, which is one down for the B, C chord. G bass tone, which is one down from the A. You're continually walking down virtually a whole octave if you want to do it that way. But you're always returning to that C chord. Okay? Now, how about an organ player? An organ player could set their keys up such that they could play it like a piano. Okay? But they have something pianos don't have. They have a separate section built into them that give you bass. And it's a section on the floor. So we're going to reposition the camera in just a moment and put us on the floor where we can talk about the bass pedals and how they can be utilized to take that second copy of caissons and play it the way a traditional organ player might be learning how to play it, which you may be if you're watching our video. So when we come back, we're going to take a look at those pedals and we'll dissect them a little bit. Okay, so here we are at the Lowrey Inspire, and I'm going to introduce you to your pedals down here on the floor. Now, these pedals are not something that have to be played. If you're playing on an instrument that has something like an easy button, which all of the Lowreys do, then the pedals are not a quote-unquote necessity. But I do want to introduce them to you in the event that you would like to do something similar to what you could do on a piano. So as we scroll down here, we're going to take a look here at our foot pedals down here on the floor. And you'll notice that there is a pattern set on those pedals. You have a set of 2 pedals, followed by a set of 3 short black pedals. A set of 2 short black pedals, then a set of 3 short black pedals, then another set of 2 short black pedals, and then there's 1 black pedal at the end. Now, this is to recreate the keyboard. You got 2 black keys, you got 3 black keys, you got 2 black keys. Now, that last one on the end is the first in what would be the next set of 3. This instrument happens to have an octave and a half worth of pedals. Some instruments have less, some instruments have more. Lowrey made a total 2-octave instrument was their largest pedal series, and then 1 octave is their smallest. So this is kind of right in the middle here. So the letters that were outside of the boxes would be played essentially with the foot, because when you stomp on these pedals, that's a C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then C. So there's your octave, and then we have the next half octave, D, E, F, G. The black keys, obviously we have a C sharp, D flat, D sharp, E flat, all the way up. So as someone's playing here, they're going to be playing their chord, right? So they have their chord in their left hand. We have a corresponding bass pedal that we could play with our foot. Now, is this easier than using the bass section on a piano? I don't want to say it's easier. I don't want to say it's harder. I want to say that it's different. Okay? And what I mean by that is I am trading reaching down with my left hand over and over and over again, as I would need to do with, instead of reaching down with my left hand to get that bass tone, I'm reaching with my foot to get the bass tone. Now what that does is it frees my left hand up to only play chords and not bass, which means I don't have to make as much movement in my left hand because my foot is taking care of that low bass tone. So the beginning of the song starts out with the C bass pedal, and then there's a C chord. Now I could have played the higher C. Notice that's an octave away. So let's start with this one. So I'm going to start on this higher C, and I play that first. So here's my C bass pedal. Now, is that easier? I don't know. I mean, it's really going to be dependent upon you. An instrument like this, I could make the lower keyboard just a piano if I decided to. But it's really nice to have that option of those foot pedals that are down there if you have them, because it gives you a whole different way that you can play the song. So if you like that low bass tone, but you don't want that continual movement of the left hand, you can keep your left hand in one spot and get all of your chords, because your bass are these guys. Okay? Now, if we scroll up here for a second, I want to call to your attention a certain button here. So if we look towards our easy button, there is a button on the left-hand side of the instrument, right underneath the easy button to the left that says MCS. There's one that says MCS Plus up top. We're not going to talk about that today. Now that MCS button is essentially part of the easy button. When you hit your easy button, that MCS button comes on along with the memory. Now if you notice here, I turned the MCS button on all on its own. And I did that for a reason. One is when I hit the easy button and the easy button lights up and the memory button lights up and the MCS, they all work as one cohesive button, but they do three things. What the easy button does is the easy button on its own is the part that plays the pedal for you. The MCS button plays the other notes of the chord, and the memory button holds all of that down until you hit a new one. So by not turning the easy button on and not turning the memory on, just hitting MCS, I'm getting the benefit of help with the chord, but I can still play the bass pedals by myself, and the chord is only going to hold as long as I'm holding the key down. So if we pan back out here, and I show you my lower keyboard, if I play a C, listen to what it sounds like with the MCS on. That's the whole C chord, whole F chord, whole G chord. So if I couple that with what I was doing with my foot, this is a nice way to transition into doing it part way. I don't have to go the whole kit and caboodle and play all of my left-hand fingers. If I want to try to work this foot in there, I play the one note with the foot, and I can play the one note with the chord. And obviously my right hand would play the melody notes. So this is, again, a really nice way, a nice opportunity for you to be able to work your way into trying to play some of these notes in the bass section, be it on a piano or an organ. And that extra page is the key, that extra arrangement is the key to give you the opportunity to do that. If it's a letter outside of the box, you either play it with the bass pedals or you play it like a piano in the low section. If it's a letter inside of the box, that's a chord, okay? And we already know how to do those. When we come back, we're going to introduce our newest song.